Welcome to this MS Views and News program called the MS Forum. I want to give thanks to our two supporters for tonight's program. We have Alexion and we have Novartis, and I would hope that you all say thank you as well by giving them a round of applause. We had exhibitors, a lot of them out there. We had Alexion, A&I Pharmaceuticals, Biogen, Genentech, Novartis. We had the Multiple Sclerosis Society. We had TG Therapeutics, and I want to thank them all for being exhibitors here as well. Okay, so let's welcome Dr. Gretchen Hawley.
Okay. Thank you so much, Stuart, and MS Views and News for having me. I absolutely love talking about this topic because so often I find that people with MS are doing traditional exercises, which sounds great, but when you have MS, exercise often needs to be different in order to target not just your muscles, but the brain and the connection between the two. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we will be exercising, so hopefully you guys all have a little bit of space to scoot back. So raise your hand if you feel like you've been affected by your walking or balance, getting up from a chair, if those types of activities have been challenging for you due to your MS. Okay, not everyone, but a lot of people. Okay, you can lower your hands. Now, raise your hand if you feel like you've done exercises before. It could be physical therapy, it could be regular exercise, personal training, whatever, and you feel like it did not help you. A few. You're not going to offend me. That's absolutely okay. So the thing about MS, again, is that when you're exercising, you have to exercise in a specific way in order for your muscles and your brain and the connection between the two, which is your neural pathways, in order to work. And oftentimes, if you don't, that's when you'll find that maybe you did get stronger, but walking was just as challenging, or climbing stairs was just as challenging, or your balance was better, but you were still tripping every time you took a step. So we're going to review exactly what to do. There's two, I like to consider it as two different types of exercise. There's more than that, but we're going to simplify things. So type 1 is just regular or traditional exercises. This would be personal training, even traditional orthopedic physical therapy, doing exercises you learned from a friend or that you've Googled. And oftentimes these are general strengthening exercises, general balance, general range of motion exercises. And again, this would be the examples where you felt like you maybe did improve your strength, but your day-to-day activities weren't any easier. Then we've got functional exercise, which I also like to call MS-specific exercise. MS-specific exercise is very different because we work on strengthening the muscles, the brain, and that connection between the two. And 9.9 times out of 10, this is the type of exercise where you will see that carry over, where you do feel stronger and your walking is better, or you feel better balance and climbing stairs is easier, or you're tripping less. So you're noticing those improvements throughout your day, not just when you're exercising. So in order for a muscle to move, this is true if you have MS or if you don't have MS, there's three things that need to happen. First, our brain needs to work, and this could either be a reflex, like you touch something hot, and it's reflexive of, oh my gosh, lift my hand. Or you step on something sharp and you have to lift your leg. Or it's an active thought of, I want to get over there. I need to lift my leg. Gretchen, lift your leg. And it has to be an active thought. That's the first step, is your brain. The second step, once that happens, you want to travel down these neural pathway. There's trillions of different ways to get from that brain of that reflex or that thought of lift my leg all the way down to your hip flexors or your knee or your ankle, where you actually lift. And then your muscle will lift. And it's important to know this sequence, because when you have MS, the issue is not the muscle. It might appear that way because you feel weaker, and that is a muscular issue. But when you have MS, the reason that all of mobility is challenging is because of the neural pathways. So when you're strengthening your muscles, when you're working on balance and walking, you have to have an approach that strengthens that middle component, those neural pathways. So I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that. So the reason that this is all possible is due to neuroplasticity. Raise your hand if you have heard of neuroplasticity. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you know it well enough where you could explain it to someone else. Okay, not as many, but there's a few. Neuroplasticity is so important to understand because it's the reason that with MS, you can actually build strength and balance and mobility. I know that it can sound too good to be true, but it actually is possible. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to strengthen that neural pathway from your brain all the way down to your hip flexors or your knee flexors or any muscle. And if that neural pathway is long gone, you've tried to lift your leg for 30 plus years and it hasn't been lifting, neuroplasticity is also the ability for your brain to find a new way, a new pathway from point A being your brain to point B being any muscle. So regardless of if you have some movement or no movement, neuroplasticity is what will help you reach your mobility goals. So you might be wondering how? Through MS-specific exercise guidelines. So we're about to exercise in a second here, but I get these questions all the time. Once you know what exercises of, well, how do I make them more effective for me and specifically for MS? So this is what research shows. Aerobic exercise first. Now, aerobic exercise does not need to be going for a run or going for a walk or the Stairmaster or elliptical treadmill. I often like to do upper body aerobic exercise, so just forward punches. You can literally use one arm like I'm doing now, or you can use two. You could do quick wall push-ups. There's tons of ways that you can get your heart rate up. But research shows that if you can get your heart rate up before you do functional strengthening exercises, your brain is more likely to find or strengthen those neural pathways. You can just do it for 3 or 5 minutes. I like to use my upper body because then we're not fatiguing our legs for when we exercise. Next up is functional exercise. We're going to do this together in a second, but it's a specific type of exercise, not just traditional PT or exercise. Good quality is so important. Our brain remembers what we do more of. And so an example that I like to give is one of my favorite exercises is a standing march. So that looks something like this. Now, this is what good quality looks like, where my knee's coming up. Doesn't have to be this high, but my foot is staying right in alignment with my knee. Poor quality or less ideal quality might be, and I'm going to really exaggerate, but it might be something like this. We wouldn't want this angle. The more I am repeating this movement at this angle, the more likely when I walk, I'm going to trip over myself because I've been strengthening that neural pathway to do this movement. So even if you can only do 2 repetitions of good quality, stop at 2. It's better to do that than lots of repetitions of poor quality. High repetitions, think about it this way. If you try to do an exercise 5 times, that's 5 times that your brain tried to strengthen or find that neural pathway, which is fantastic. But if throughout the day, you did 5 in the morning, 5 late morning, 5 early afternoon, and a few more times, you may have done 30 by the end of the day. And that cumulative amount is what we're really looking for. That's 30 times that your brain tried to find or strengthen that neural pathway. So that repetition of good quality is really what it's all about. Rest breaks, though, you don't have to do these all at once. Again, you can do 2 repetitions and stop. You could do your first set is 10 because you've got good energy. Your second set might be 6. Your third set might be 4. Your fourth set might be 2. Your fifth set might be 2. It doesn't have to be equivalent. So I get this question a lot. How many repetitions and sets should I do? However many you can with good quality. If you're a numbers person like me, that answer doesn't sit well with you. You want to be told how many. The number that I like to go for is shoot for 30 good quality repetitions, whatever that looks like for you. Again, could be 10, followed by 5, followed by 3, and so on and so forth. If 30 is too hard, shoot for 15. If 15 is too hard, shoot for 10. If 30 is too easy, go for 50. But 30 can be that number that you shoot for originally, and then see how that feels for you. Again, adjust along the way. And then how many days per week? So the National MS Society suggests 150 minutes of exercise per week. And I love the way that this is worded because it's per week. With MS, every day is different. So you could do 5 minutes today. You could do 60 minutes tomorrow. It can change based on what your energy levels and mobility levels are. And then other research suggests 5 to 6 days a week is best. I like to combine the two. So 5 days a week of 30 minutes each day is that 150 minutes. Now you, of course, can tweak that as it feels best for you, but that's generally what we're shooting for if that's possible. I have lots of clients, though, where that isn't possible, and they're only able to exercise 3 days a week, and they still see good results when they're doing the MS-specific exercises. So these are 4 ways that you can ensure that neuroplasticity works for you. So it's not just the exercise component, but staying focused. When you're exercising, let's go with that marching exercise. So when you're lifting your leg up, seated or standing, you are focusing on your hip flexors. What does that feel like right here? Can you feel those muscles flex? How high are you lifting your leg? Overall, does that feel different than the other side? Versus, okay, what am I going to have for dinner tomorrow? What do I need to prepare for that? If your mind is elsewhere, research shows that neuroplasticity is less likely to happen. So you're focusing and being intentful? That's not the word. Being intentional about every movement that you're doing. You're going to make sure that it's challenging. If anything feels easy, neuroplasticity is less likely to kick in. You're going to add some urgency. And I like to have some fun with this. If you like music, you can try to do 10 repetitions of good quality movements within the chorus of your favorite song. Or if you want to practice walking, one of my patients said she loved the Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball song. She pressed play and she tried to do 3 laps down her hallway by the time that song was over. So add some urgency, make it fun. That's another great way to get neuroplasticity working. And saliency, which basically just means make it mean something. If you're just doing this exercise feeling like, okay, Dr. Gretchen said this is going to help with my walking, that's okay. But if you're doing this exercise thinking, this exercise is going to help me walk around the park with my grandkids so that I can hang out with them instead of staying home alone, it's going to make a difference. Research shows that having your exercises mean something actually does help with neuroplasticity. Okay, I've got 2 examples and we're going to do some exercises together. Hands up if you have a goal of improving your walking in any way. It could be quality, distance, stamina. Okay, lots of you guys. Perfect. So a lot of people think walking is just one movement, one goal. But let's talk about functional exercise. That's the type of exercise that you need in order to see these improvements throughout your day. So walking is actually 7 movements. So I'm going to tell you what those 7 movements are. The first thing that needs to happen is you need to shift your weight forward onto your front leg. If you don't do that, you're going to lift your back leg and you're going to just fall because you still have weight on that leg. So number 1, you want to shift your weight forward. Number 2, you want to bend your knee. Number 3, you want to lift your ankle. If you have foot drop, that's going to be extra hard. Number 4, you bring your knee up. Number 5 is straighten your knee. Number 6 is put your heel down. And all while you were doing that, you were standing on one leg. Even if you're using a mobility aid, you were still standing on one leg. That's number 7. So what functional exercise means is those 7 movements are now 7 possible exercises for you. So I'm just going to give you one example before we do our actual exercises. One of them, the first one, was shifting your weight forward. So and the way that you would turn this into an exercise is by practicing shifting your weight forward and back and forward. And this is an exercise. If we take the second one, which was bending your knee, you can hold on to something for support, but you practice bending your knee and down and up and down. That's what functional exercise means, is taking your goal and moving it into different exercises that replicate the exact movement of your goal. So the other example that I want to give is standing up from a chair. So I'm going to move this chair up here. So standing up from a chair, again, a lot of people think this is just one movement, but it's actually several. So most of us, and looking at you guys right now, I think about 90% of you are relaxed in the back of your chair, as you should be. But in order to stand up, we can't be at the back of our chair. So the first thing you need to do to stand up is sit up tall. The second thing is you need to scoot forward. The third thing is you need to open your feet wider. This is going to help with balance. The fifth thing is you need to bend your knees. Again, this is going to help you stand up stronger. Then you hinge forward. Then you press up when your shoulders are hinged. And then going to sit down is the exact opposite. Hopefully your feet are already in the right position, but you hinge, bend your knees, and then sit up. So going to stand up, I stopped counting, but that was probably 6 or 7 movements. The way that you turn that into exercises, and we're going to practice some of these, is, for example, the first thing was just sitting up tall. Practice sitting up tall, and then recline again. And sit up tall. This is a great core exercise. Another example, the second thing was scooting forward. So practice, these chairs are going to be tricky because there's lots of friction, but practice scooting forward, practice scooting backwards, and you're doing repetitions of that. So again, we're taking your goal and we're breaking it down into as many movements as possible, and those movements are your exercises. Okay, so we're going to exercise now. So here's how it's going to work. You're going to stay seated. You can do almost all of these exercises standing. We're all sitting, and seated is just as effective as standing, so we're just going to stay seated. I'm going to demonstrate exactly how to do it. To modify, for now, I do have a slide in a second here where I'll tell you more ways to modify. For now, if anything is too challenging, just aim for less movement. These should be hard. And I hate to say that. Exercising can, and again, I hate to say it, but it should feel slightly discouraging because the movements are challenging. That's a good thing. It means that you are working on muscles that are specifically weakened from MS, which is exactly what we want to do. We don't necessarily want to strengthen the muscles that are already strong. We want to strengthen those weakest ones. Again, if they're hard, that means they're worth doing. If you have zero movement or very little movement, it doesn't mean that that's not a good exercise. It means it's a great exercise. With that said, focus on effort. If you're focusing on how high you're lifting or how much movement you're seeing, and you're not seeing a lot, it's going to feel discouraging, and it might even feel like, this isn't good for me, let me do something else. When in reality, it is a good one. So instead, focus on effort. How much effort are you putting into lifting your leg? And if your answer is 90 to 100%, that's fantastic. That's what we're really looking for. And your muscles can get stronger with repetition. If you've never done these before, you might not believe me right now, but the more you do them, the more you will see improvements. Okay, so first one is marching. I demonstrated this a few times now, standing. This is what standing would look like. The reason we're doing this one together today is because lifting your leg like this is a movement that you need to do when you're walking. One of the movements was lifting your leg like that. We also need to lift our leg when we're seated to scoot forward. We need to lift our leg to get out of a car or into a car. So this is a very functional exercise. It's one of those components from a lot of different movements. So we're going to do it seated. There's 2 different ways. We'll start with the harder. The harder version is sitting up tall. So sitting up tall, core muscles are engaged, meaning you just kind of tighten those belly muscles. And you're just going to try to lift one leg. Try your best to lift one foot up, little pause, slowly down. Other side up, pause, and down. This is probably the hardest version of marching. If you want an easier version, you can recline backwards a bit. Belly muscles are still engaged, and you're going to march from here. So you've got this recline going. You could do standing if you're doing this one at home. Shockingly, a lot of people find that standing is easier, even if mobility is challenging. And the reason for that is because when you're standing, your hips are fully straight and then you're bending, versus when you're sitting, your hips are bent and you're bending further. So that's why that might be true for you. How did that one feel? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Okay, this next one can be a doozy, but it's super important, especially if you have foot drop. So as you can see from this picture, you can lift both of your ankles at the same time, or you can do one and then the other. But let me give you a tip to make this easier. You're going to be sitting towards the edge of your chair and straighten your knees a bit. So feet should still be flat on the ground, but move your feet away from you. That's going to make this exercise easier, and easier does not mean cheating. And then with one or both of your legs, you're going to slowly lift that ankle. Little pause, slowly lower. Now, same thing on the other side. This will help with foot drop, foot scuffing, tripping over your toes. If you have foot slap, which is when you hear your feet walking when you're walking, then the slowly lowering is going to be the more important part for you. If you have the classic foot drop where lifting your ankle is hard, the slowly lifting is going to be the most important part for you. So I like to say just go slow all around, then you're getting both areas. How's that exercise feel? Thumbs up. Yeah? Okay, awesome. Leg kicks. This is often the most challenging exercise for 95% of the clients that I work with. There's actually two components to this. And the reason this exercise is so important is because a lot of you raised your hand saying that walking is a goal that you have. There were two components of walking. One was bending your knee, and then the other was straightening your knee. And this exercise, even though we're going to be doing it seated, is bending and straightening your knee. You also need to bend and straighten your knee when you're scooting forward, when we wanted to bend our knees to get us in a better position to stand up. So what you're going to do is you're sitting towards the back of your chair and your core muscles are engaged. You're going to slowly straighten one knee. Pause, straight just as far as you can, doesn't need to be fully straight. And then slowly bend all the way. Keep pulling. This is the part that my clients roll their eyes at me that's really challenging. So bend, 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 bend. Then straighten and bend. And same thing on the other side, straighten. This is going to help you straighten your leg when you're walking and bend. Now, if you have spasticity in your quad muscles, the front of your thigh, then what you might find is when you straighten, bending is even more challenging. It just kind of stays straight and it really doesn't want to bend. If that's the case, you can do just the bending portion of this exercise where you're just regularly sitting, bend, 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 and then just come back to that neutral sitting position. So there's different ways that you can do this one. How does that one feel? Thumbs up. Okay. Fewer thumbs up, and I'm not surprised to see that, but great job. And I've got one more exercise for you. And this is one that I love because everyone can do this. It's so feasible. All you're going to do is we're sitting reclined and do your best to sit up tall. You don't have to move your butt. You don't have to scoot forward. You're just going to sit up tall and then recline and then sit up tall. Nice. And if you wanted, you could stay here for as long as you can. Maybe that's 30 seconds, maybe it's 5 minutes or anywhere in between. Or you just stay for 2 or 3 seconds and you're more so going for repetitions, which is best for improving strength. Holding longer is going to be best for improving stamina or endurance. So seated exercises are my favorite. Even if you can do standing exercises, the majority of us, myself included, sit for the majority of the day. So now you've got 4 exercises that you can do throughout the day as you think of it. So if any of these felt too challenging, as I mentioned initially, don't move as much and also focus on effort rather than the amount of movement that you're seeing. So less movement first. Number 2, and this shocks people, go faster. Faster requires you to use your muscles for less amount of time. If I do a quick march, that doesn't even take me 1 second. If I'm going slow and steady, like I just instructed you to, it could take 5 seconds to slowly raise, slowly lower, add that pause. So going faster can make it a bit easier. Changing positions. Again, we did seated reclined. I've showed you standing. Choose whichever options feel easiest for you. Easy does not mean you're cheating. So many people think that's true. Easier is better because you'll be able to do more repetitions, and the more repetitions you can do, the more opportunities for neuroplasticity. So implementing these throughout the day. As I mentioned earlier, you could do 30 minutes at a time, but research shows that doing exercises throughout the day is just as effective as exercising all at once. So if that fits your lifestyle or your energy or mobility levels better, there's no shame in that. Absolutely do it. As a physical therapist, I actually prefer to do them throughout the day because what that does is it's telling your brain that you want to use these muscles in the morning and the afternoon and the evening versus hands up if you found that you did notice improved strength, but only at one time throughout the day, like only in the morning or only in the afternoon. Yeah, a few people. That can absolutely happen. So throughout the day is a great option. Picking one exercise or up to all 4, but whatever feels doable to you, and picking a time of day where you will do that. And then if possible, associate that exercise with something that you're already doing, like going to the bathroom. This sounds like a weird one, but I always like to recommend marching exercise, that seated marching, after you've gone to the bathroom. Your pants are pulled back up, you've already peed, you're good to go. You're going to do 5 marches and then stand up and go. Or maybe 5 sit to stands, where you're going to stand up and then sit down. This is a great functional exercise to improve standing up and sitting down. So finding something, going to the bathroom, washing your hands, a commercial if you're watching TV, anything can count. And then aim to do MS-specific exercises 3 to 6 days a week. Research shows 5 to 6 days is best. I have found with my clients that even 3 days works as well. So that's like what I like to share. And tracking your progress is so important because, as I mentioned a few times, these exercises can feel hard. Some of them might feel like you can't even do them at all. But if you're tracking your progress, you'll be more likely to stick to them for a longer period of time. And so think about things like, are you lifting your leg or moving the body part any more, any higher? If so, even if it's a centimeter, fantastic, celebrate that. Is it feeling any easier? Maybe you keep track of how challenging it feels for you, with 100% being the most challenging thing you've ever done. If it was 100% at day 1, maybe on day 15, it's 80%. That's improvement. Are you not scuffing your foot as much when you're walking? Are you tripping less? Any less aches or pains? Think about other ways to measure your progress versus just the end goal of, I can walk for 15 minutes now instead of 5. If you're only focusing on the end goal, it's harder to stay consistent. Okay. Any questions? So this is where you can find extra resources, exercises. I believe I put my YouTube channel on there with even more videos if you're a visual learner like me. But what questions do you guys have?
You were talking about the seated marches for when people get up after they pee. Most guys aren't sitting when they're peeing, so now what?
Well, there is a number 2 that also could be done.
I was waiting to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your choice.
All
or
right.
even after you pee, you can sit down and then try it.
I could. You're
Extra
right.
effort, but
You're right.
exercise.
But we could do that from somewhere else too, right? Like
True.
at a kitchen chair.
Absolutely.
Right.
It could be when you're done with a meal, you do 5 marches. When you sit down for a meal, you do 5 marches.
Thank you very much.
Can you explain foot drop?
Yes. So foot drop, I have found, I don't know if research shows this to be true, but as a physical therapist, I have found that it is one of the most common muscle groups affected by MS, which is I don't know how nerdy we want to get here, but the muscle is the tibialis anterior. It's the muscle on the front of your shin, and it comes all the way down to the front of your ankle and even your big toe as well. So foot drop is when that muscle is weak. And another muscle that could cause it is tightness in your calf muscles on the back of your lower leg. If those muscles are tight, it pulls your toes down and your heel up, which could cause foot drop. Foot drop means, I'll show you with this leg since that's pointing out towards you. Foot drop could mean that when you're moving forward, your toe drags because you can't lift up your ankle. It could also mean, and this is sneaky, it could also mean that when you're walking, your leg swings around. Because you can't lift your ankle, your brain is going to say, okay, how else can I move my leg forward if I don't want to scuff my foot? And you might swing your leg around, you might hike your hip up. There's lots of ways you can compensate. It might be foot slap, where when you're walking, you hear your foot slap the ground with every single step. It could be, if you look at the bottom of your shoes, you see scuff marks on the front of your shoe because you keep scuffing your toe. It could mean tripping over your toe. So there's lots of different ways that it can present. And sometimes people don't even realize they have foot drop until I share this with them. I look at their shoes and they realize, oh yeah, that happens all the time. In which case, start doing that foot drop exercise that we practiced earlier.
Thank you for answering that. Can you also tell people about the AFOs?
Yeah, so there's, of course, exercises to improve foot drop, but we've reviewed one. There's several. There's also other options too. So AFOs are often made out of carbon fiber, but there are different materials. And it's something that you put in your shoe. Oftentimes it has to be a sneaker or at least some type of stable shoe. You put it in your shoe, and then there is a carbon fiber or plastic piece that comes up towards your knee in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes it's the front of your lower leg, sometimes it's the outside or your back, and that works by preventing your ankle from dropping. So if you're looking to prevent your ankle from dropping, you could use an AFO. There's also ankle braces that actually work opposite. They work by assisting you to lift your ankle. So as a PT, I prefer those because they actually use your muscles. Examples might be the Dictus Band or the Elevate 360, but those are some other options.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I have couple. When I walk with my walker, sometimes when I get tired, I bend over, and when I walk, sometimes I walk on the side of my foot.
Yeah. So that is weakness specifically on the outside of your lower leg. So foot drop is weakness on the front of your lower leg. When you land on the outside of your foot, it's weakness on the outside part of your leg. So an exercise that I like to do for that, I don't know if you can see my feet when I sit, so I'll demonstrate with my hand. So instead of lifting your leg up, or maybe in addition to that exercise, you're going to practice scooting your ankle out, just your ankle, not your hip and knee, just your ankle out and then back in. And that's a way to strengthen those muscles on the outside of your lower leg. It's a really tricky one because it's hard to do. So your hip muscles are going to want to help out. Your knee muscles are going to want to help out. Normal range of motion for that is 7 degrees. Very little. So if there's any more than that, it's probably other stronger muscles helping out.
Yeah, but how about bending over when I walk? I get tired. Then
Yeah.
I bend over.
Yeah. So bending over when you walk, there's 2 possibilities of what you might look like. I'll mention both because whatever isn't true for you might be true for someone else. So when you bend over when you walk, typically either you are hinging. So your butt is out, your back is flat though. And what this indicates is weakness in your lower side. So your glutes, your hamstrings, your back. So we want to strengthen these muscles. And it could also mean tightness in the hip flexors here. So we want to stretch the hip flexors. The other option is you're rounded. So you're still leaning forward more, but you're rounded. And what this indicates is more so back weakness and pectoral or front of your shoulder tightness. So we'd want to work on stretching your pec muscles, strengthening your back muscles. So it's going to be different depending on how you look when you're hinging forward.
Thank you. So feeding off that question, can you tell us or tell people what is the proper height to be using a cane or a walker?
Yes, I love this question. Hands up, if you use a cane or a walker, were you taught how to size it to your body? Yeah, okay, I see. Yes, that's good. 90% of the time, the answer is no. So the way that you're supposed to size it to your body, and it's helpful if you have someone to help you, but you're going to stand up with or without shoes on. If you are only walking with that aid with shoes on, then have shoes on. But if you also walk with shoes off, then have shoes off. So either option, but you're standing up in your best posture and you're dropping your arms down towards your side. And then those wrist bones that we have, if you kind of push that to the outside of your rollator, it should hit the handle. That's how you'll know if your rollator is the right height for you. If you're using a cane, this is where a partner would be helpful. Again, you're standing up and you're going to measure from that wrist bone all the way down to the floor. That's the height that the cane should be. So it's all about those wrist bones. If you need help finding them, you can wave, and it's right where that crease is. And having it at the appropriate height is so important. So often people will have it too high because they think that that's going to make them walk better, which may be true, but the majority of the time that doesn't actually happen, and you're still hinging forward just with your arms higher versus down at the appropriate height.
All right, next question is from online. Person's asking, I own a grit chair that I power with my arms. Is it effective exercise?
Yes. So here's what I want you to think about. When we're thinking about functional exercise, do the thing that's hard. So for this specific example, if pushing a chair is hard and you want to get better at that, then do that as an exercise. That's the easiest way I can explain what a functional exercise is. If standing long enough to brush your teeth is hard, practice standing while you're brushing your teeth. Now, it's going to be challenging. There's ways you can modify it. But so for this person, yes, that's a fantastic exercise.
Do you have any hand exercises with hand weakness, difficulty holding a phone, a fork, a steering wheel?
Yeah. So if we're going along with that theme of do the thing that's hard, a fantastic exercise is practice holding a fork as an exercise. So you could even do that right now if you wanted to. But you'd pick up the fork and you're not going to see any movement, but you'd squeeze, and then relax and squeeze. And you're trying to strengthen in that very specific motion. Steering wheel, same thing. Squeeze that steering wheel. Relax, squeeze, relax. It sounds like it's more so gripping versus opening. So yeah, holding a mug in whatever way you want to be able to hold, whether it's the handle or the actual cup, but practice, squeeze, and relax, and do that as an exercise.
Thank you. Another person wants to know what you can tell them about hand controls for a car. Are you able to talk about that?
I am not the best person to speak on that,
Okay.
but an occupational therapist would be the best person.
That's true.
I have drop foot and walk with an AFO. Should I be concerned about my ankle strength weakening from that use? And what should I do without the AFO to strengthen it?
Fantastic question. And my answer would be different for each person based on how much strength you have or don't have. If you are able to do that exercise that we just did with the AFO off, if you're able to lift your ankle even just the tiniest bit, then you should absolutely be exercising with the AFO off if you can do so safely. Oftentimes, when you're using an AFO to help with your walking, your ankle actually gets weaker because the way that an AFO works is by preventing your ankle from moving, which is a good thing in one sense because it can't flop down, but it also can't lift either. So if you have zero movement with it off, keep it on because that's going to be safest. But if you can lift your ankle even just a little bit with it off, then start doing those exercises tonight.
Thank you for that. A person I know has posterior tibial tendon dysfunction, and they say it was called a neuroorthopedic told this person that it was caused by a gait issue from his or her MS. That person then on to develop arthritis in the same ankle, but they want to know from you, what do you suggest for exercise to reduce the pain that's caused?
So with arthritis, and this is going to be my answer if you have arthritis in your ankle, your foot, your knee, your hip, oftentimes repetitions, and I just told you to do lots of repetitions, but repetitions can actually feel uncomfortable. So a way that you can work around that is instead of doing lots of repetitions, hold longer. So for the ankle dorsiflexion exercise, instead of lots of repetitions of lifting your ankle, you might lift and hold for as long as you can. Maybe it's 5 seconds, maybe it's 30 seconds, somewhere in between, and then slowly lower. If it's the bending and straightening your knee, maybe you just straighten and hold. How long can you hold it here instead of all these repetitions? So that's what my answer would be for that.
Thank you. Next person over here had a question. I think it was you. There you go.
I'm curious about vestibular when you're doing this and if you get dizzy. And how's a person supposed to do that? Because when you have that delayed reaction with your movement and you know you need to stop because you're getting dizzy, how do you build that up? Because that's what I've been working on for the last year.
Yeah, so with vestibular therapy, what you typically want to do, it's called desensitization. It's not enjoyable, but what you do is you do an exercise, any exercise that you're looking to improve, and then as soon as you start feeling that dizziness, you stop and you wait for it to go away, but then you do it again and then wait for that symptom to come on, and then you stop and wait for it to go away and then do it again. So you're purposely making that symptom come on, which is the very uncomfortable part. But through doing that over and over again, it's likely that you'll be able to eventually move, do that exercise or walk longer before that actually kicks in because you're desensitizing that.
Do you have any recommendation between the Bioness and the Psionic? I have both, but which one would work better for foot drop?
Great question. My recommendation would be Psionic, and here's why. With the Bioness or Walk Aid, those target one muscle group. I guess Bioness does have the option where it's upper and lower, so it can target more muscle groups. But even with that, the Psionic targets 4 muscle groups. It can target your quads, which would help with straightening your knee. It can target your hamstrings, which can help with bending your knee. It can target the front of the ankle muscles to help with foot drop and the outside ankle muscles to help with that landing on the outside of your foot. So because of that, it can help with more muscle groups than what the Walk Aid or the Bioness can help with. Yep. Yep. Yes, but they kind of do the same thing. So they both stimulate the nerve in a way where it gets the muscle to move. It is different current. It's not exactly the same thing, but it kind of works in the same way. So that would be my preference, only because it targets more muscle groups, but you can turn them off if you don't want to use, if you don't need the hamstrings, you don't need to use those electrodes. And same is true for all of them.
All right. That's it. So let's thank Gretchen.
Thank you.
Thank you and have a great night.